Service in the military demands full commitment of mind and body, and that service can take a toll, especially for the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who go into combat on behalf of our nation. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is an all too common side effect of military service, especially for our combat veterans. June is National PTSD Awareness Month, an effort to shine a light on issues related to PTSD, reduce the stigma associated with it, and help ensure that those suffering receive proper treatment. This episode of Veterans AZ is dedicated to spreading awareness and hope. If you or a loved one suffers from PTSD, there are people who want to help and who can help. In today's episode of Veterans AZ, we will meet people working on the front lines of PTSD treatment, including Dr. Brandi Luedtke, a clinical psychologist and the program manager of the PTSD clinical team at the Phoenix VA Medical Center. First, we will speak with two young men, United States Army combat veterans of the War on Terror. Chad Aruda and Adam Bigelow are our Arizona Veterans of the Month. Their military service is laudable, but since then, they have dedicated themselves to helping fellow combat veterans heal the hidden wounds of war. I'm here with Chad Aruda and Adam Bigelow, both combat veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And since then, both active in helping fellow veterans through your work with the PTSD Foundation of America. Thank you very much for joining us. Chad, at one point after your active duty service and then really serving in a similar capacity, but through these private organizations, when did you connect with the PTSD Foundation of America, and what really drove you in that direction?
So for years now, I've had a battle buddy of mine, a brother in arms that he's been struggling really bad with drug and alcohol abuse, multiple attempts of suicide, and it was just killing me. Just, there wasn't anything that I could do to help him. I tried to go over and visit with him, try and talk with him, but it just, couldn't get him off the couch, couldn't get him motivated. And, it was just kind of felt like he was a lost cause almost, But long story short, I was like, well, what if I helped get involved here? No nonprofit experience before. I volunteered on some things within the community, but not anywhere near on the level of my involvement as now. It's really, shed light in my life on a lot of different ways. But, it started in 2018. In the spring and the summertime, we went out and visited Camp Hope, and I was hooked. I was like, I really want to help bring Camp Hope to his name's Felix. I was like, I want to bring Camp Hope to him, and hopefully we can get him help here.
That's really great of you for a brother in arms to continue working so hard on his behalf. So really, for both of you, PTSD is personal. Yeah. It's a personal thing. And I want to talk to you, Adam. You're a survivor, and you were almost one of those veterans whose lives was claimed by post-traumatic stress. Can you tell us about that day where a well-timed call from your wife, I believe it was, literally saved your life?
Yeah, it was. I was in my lowest moment. Leading up to that, I had my issues, and when I was in Afghanistan, my third deployment is when I started noticing I was having a lot of different issues, and I reached out. We all do the post health assessment on these little PDAs, and what you've seen, if it's been dead bodies or whatever. And the last question is, do you want help? Do you want to see somebody? And I checked yes, and nobody contacted me. Nobody got a hold of me. And when I got home, I really started getting into alcohol. Same thing we did once we come stateside, you do that all over again, and right there, I was like, yeah, I want to talk to somebody. And nobody did anything again. So it kind of spiraled even more, and I started getting to drugs and alcohol until it was until I couldn't do it anymore. And it was actually during Christmas time. I sent my family back here to Arizona, and told them I'd be coming in a couple days to meet up with them, because I told them I had some work stuff to do. And Yeah, I got on my knees in my bedroom, and I put my pistol in my mouth, and I know it sounds cliche, like movie thing, but I was honestly starting putting pressure on the trigger, and my phone rang, and it's a picture of my wife with our kids, and that's what it saved my life. Like just seeing them, it just pulled the pistol out, and that's when I knew I'm like I need a lot of help. Um, so that was really basically it. I needed help. That's where I got involved with the foundation, which also saved my life. Because there's something about going somewhere that's not clinical, but sitting with other combat veterans that have been through it and are going through it, and being able to share the stories and connection with each other, and know that all those feelings that you're feeling, you're not alone in that. So many are suffering and dealing with the same things, and yeah, it just absolutely saved my life. And I did all my groups in Washington in our chapter there, and I came back to Arizona, and we weren't here yet. The foundation wasn't here yet. And it's with mental health, when you don't have that support and you don't have those things, you start sliding back very rapidly. You can be 2 years in programming, and without support, you start rapidly going back. I went to school for welding. I went to school for furniture making. And then I was like, well, I don't like working around people. I don't like these environments still. So I'm going to get my CDL and I'm going to drive a truck. I'll be all by myself. And then I realized, I'm like, well, that's not a place for someone that's always in their head to be, is alone for most of the time. And I just started really struggling. And I always say God uses the phone to save me, because I was doing a haul to California, and the mentor I had that was in Washington chapter, he called me and and said, hey, we have an opportunity and a need in Arizona to start a chapter, and we thought of you, and would you be interested? And so we talked for about a couple hours. I pulled the truck over at a truck stop. We talked for a while, and the foundation flew me over to Camp Hope just to check it out like that, because I never went to Camp Hope myself. I was just in our warrior groups and mentoring sessions with a mentor. So I was there, and I was like, yeah, absolutely want to be involved. So they're like, all right, well, go ahead and, if you're ready, give your work, 2 weeks notice, and we'll get you started. And I was like, well, I already gave him 2 weeks notice, and I'm ready to start tomorrow.
So this is veterans helping veterans.
Yes.
And I know the mission of the PTSD Foundation is specific to combat veterans. Why is that distinction important?
The peer-to-peer support, like you had touched on, it's not a clinical setting. Like, I'm not going into the VA and talking to someone that just graduated from med school and trying to tell them about my problems, because they'll never understand, what's going through my mind. That's what makes the PTSD Foundation of America so unique, is it's all based off of peer-to-peer support from combat veterans only. And, everyone at Camp Hope has been through the Camp Hope program, and all the employees, the staff, they're all been through Camp Hope. So you want to be a mentor, it's all combat veterans. The camaraderie, I think, and the brotherhood that it brings back is unlike any other organization that you're going to find that's out there. And you just, within a few minutes, it's not for everybody. It's not an end-all, be-all, but there are a lot of people that it does work for, and you can relate, and it's a big trust thing.
Adam, you mentioned the warrior groups. Mm-hmm. That seems like really a cornerstone component of this program.
It is, absolutely. Not everybody needs inpatient care. Some just need that camaraderie or that support from their brothers and sisters to just deal with what they're dealing with in life. So those are very key, and it's also key for aftercare. So when someone does go to an inpatient program, if it's ours or someone else's, they can come to us, and now they have that support, because that's one of the worst things. That's what happened to me, is I went and got help, but I had no aftercare after it. So you just kind of slide back. And with us, you can come and still have mentorship and fellowship with your fellow combat veterans. And to kind of touch on like what you're talking about with Chad, like why we just specifically do combat, that doesn't mean that nobody else is worthy or they don't have issues, but it'd be like sending an alcoholic to a drug program or sending a drug addict to an alcohol program. You send people to where they can get the help that they need for their specific reasons. Trauma is trauma, it is. But combat guys, and as veterans, we all know, like, you can sit in a room of veterans, and for some reason and somehow, all the combat veterans start coming together, and they just start talking and like clicking. It's just that it's that camaraderie. That's that stuff that you went through that other people just don't understand what you've seen, like the different countries and the way of life that's there and all of the chaos that's involved with it. So it's so important. And I just wanted to be able to say that, because we're not saying that you're a veteran if you didn't go deploy, that you don't matter or your traumas don't matter. It's just we specialize in combat, and and even if you're not combat and you need help and you don't know where to reach, call us. We started a whole coalition out here with a lot of different organizations to be able to do that.
What would you say to someone who is watching this, a combat veteran who's struggling with PTSD and maybe they're not sure they need help or want help? What would you say to them?
We are trained in the military that asking for help is weakness, or mental health is weakness. And going through this in my life, I realized that it is the hardest, and it takes the most strength of anything to be able to reach out and just ask for help. If you're struggling, reach out. You're not alone. All it is if you can get over that first hurdle of calling and asking, it gets easier and easier. If you're not sure, call. If you're even battling those questions, like, I don't know if I should need help, I don't know, more than likely, if you're already in your head asking that question to yourself, you can use help. And there's different levels. Obviously mental health in our day and age is rampant, but there are so many different levels. And that's one thing that's amazing about having that support group like what we have, is you have guys that do very, very well, that have some episodes once in a while, and you have ones that are really, really struggling. So, and everywhere in between. So you get to feed off of each other and learn from each other. Like, all the things I've tried that didn't work, I can tell you everything I tried. I'm not saying that they don't work for you. I'm telling you to go out and try everything. Like, that's what I do. Like, everything that is offered, I'm like, I'm going. If it doesn't work, okay, it didn't work, or I didn't enjoy it. But that's not the end of the world. There's something else. And so just keep trying and trying, and just know you're not alone. And it takes a lot of strength. You're not weak. You're not broken. That's one thing with PTSD. A lot of people think that we're broken or something went wrong. And if you actually look at the science of the brain, everything worked completely correct. That fight, that flight, that is your brain's response to that stuff. It's just something got a little thing where we're stuck there. It's not that you're broken. Everything worked perfectly. But now we just got to retrain your brains to live a normal, or what we call a new normal life. Obviously all of us combat vets, we will never be the person we were before we saw combat. There's always going to be aspects of us that, yes, are the same, but we're always going to have a different take on a lot of different things because of the things we went through. And that's okay. Like, that's all right. Just take ownership of, like, yeah, this is my life. I went through, it's a chapter. It's not written in stone where, like, this is where I have to be stuck at. Like, I went through this, so that's where I have to live my life. That's not it. Like, that's just a chapter. Your life's a whole book, and you're in chapter 2. So let's move from chapter 2 and get into chapter 3, so we can keep writing chapter 4 and 5 and 6, so you can become the person that you want to become, so you can enjoy life again.
Especially here in Arizona.
Yeah.
Just to touch base on what Adam was saying, we were, 1 in 10 states of the veteran population of over 500,000, with 400,000 of those veterans being wartime veterans. We're close to, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it's somewhere around like 28 to 30% higher than the national suicide rate for veterans. So there is a big need here in Arizona. And those veterans that are most susceptible are from the ages of 18 to 36. So the Iraq, Afghanistan war veterans are there for some reason. It's really, really spiked up the number of veteran suicides that we're seeing. But Arizona, we're one of the most acceptable states to this, and we're here. We're trying to help. We're trying to make a difference.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us today, and thank you for all you're doing for veterans in our community. We know that our veterans are worthy, and those who need help deserve the help. So thank you so much for what you're doing and for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Thank you for having
Appreciate
us.
it.
Appreciate that.
Many thanks go to Chad and Adam and the people and organizations who support our veterans. One thing we know about PTSD is that it can affect anyone, of any rank, any background, ethnicity, or life experience. In this video from the U.S. Army Reserve Support Command, Brigadier General Ernest Luedtke shares his personal story of recovery from trauma in hopes of encouraging others to seek the same help that changed his life for the better.
No, life's not fair, but you learn to drive on. So I lost a 1-year-old daughter and had some time in the service as well, and lost some buddies, to include a really good friend in Afghanistan. And you learn to drive on. You come home and you do what you got to do. You stay strong. You don't show weakness. I'm worried that there was a stigma associated with some of the things I went through, and there's shame if you show weakness, and that's the way I felt, through some of these traumatic experiences. I didn't realize I had some symptoms it really was forgetfulness, disinterest in activities, didn't want to have relationships, had some nightmares, hit my wife in bed during my sleep, and my wife just learned to deal with it somehow and to support me, not knowing all these experiences I went through and the effect that they'd have on me. The aggression, the fear, the anxiety, they never manifested themselves in my professional life. I was doing well as a captain in industry, and in the military I had a great career as well, with early promotions and doing all the right things and helping soldiers out and getting ready for what we needed to go to war. There was a day at work I was having chest pains, and I literally thought I was having a heart attack. My civilian employer actually called an ambulance. I went to the emergency room. I had a full battery of tests for my heart, see if there's any pulmonary conditions and neurological issues that I may have had, and I came out as a fully functional, fully physical fit individual. At this point in life, I didn't know that these were all signs of post-traumatic stress. So about another month after that, my general practitioner diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress. I got put on a regimen of different pills, everything from benzos to clonazepam for prescribed medication on a daily basis. I'm not sure how my wife handled this. She's an angel and a much stronger person than me. She put up with me and handled the household, and it came to a culminating point about 3 years into this that she told me she can't handle it anymore and I needed to seek help. December 30th, 2009 is the day that my wife helped and changed my life by telling me to go to the Veterans Administration. 3 days later, January 2nd, 2010, I was in the emergency room in urgent care. Started going through what would be a journey for the rest of my life. About a month later, I saw a psychologist, Dr. C. To this day, she's another person that's helped me in life. I asked her for my 90-day plan and my road to getting better, and that was 10 years ago to the day. There is no 90-day plan. There's not a one-day plan, there's not a one-year plan or a decade-long plan. It's different for everyone, but I could guarantee you, if you seek treatment and get some help, you will get better. I'm happy to say that the relationship I have with my wife and now 3 children is a lot better. I've fully progressed. I'd like to share my story today, probably for the fact that I know what I went through, and other folks should not have to go through the same thing. There's no stigma. There's no fear that you should have. There's no shame with getting help for a mental health disorder. And at the end of the day, it's really got the opposite effect. If you go get help, you're gonna be a stronger person. You're gonna be a stronger soldier, husband or wife, brother or sister. My name is Brigadier General Brandi Luedtke, and I have post-traumatic stress.
A consistent theme of our focus on PTSD in this episode is people, those who are affected, and the many who are available and dedicated to helping. Dr. Brandi Luedtke leads a clinical team at the Phoenix VA Medical Center focused on treating veterans struggling with PTSD. We caught up with Dr. Luedtke to learn about the VA's work in this important area. I'm here with Dr. Brandi Luedtke, clinical psychologist and head of the PTSD clinical team at the Phoenix VA Medical Center. Dr. Luedtke, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
As we're in the month of June and it's PTSD Awareness Month, we're trying to shine a light on PTSD and help raise awareness about treatment options. Maybe we could start by understanding the scope of the issue. How common is PTSD among our veterans?
So trauma exposure is fairly common. So 1 in 2 people will be exposed to a traumatic event, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go on for a diagnosis of PTSD. It's slightly higher in the veteran population military due to exposure to things like war and combat. But generally in the population, it's about 7% of people have a diagnosis of PTSD. Like I said, it's slightly higher with the military population, ranging from anywhere from 13 to some of the Vietnam numbers are around 30%.
And how does PTSD manifest itself? What sorts of problems or ailments are associated with the disorder?
So first is that criteria A, which is an exposure to a traumatic event in which you felt yourself or someone else's life was threatened. Maybe you witnessed this. It can be anything from combat exposure to things like hurricanes, fires, car accidents, and so forth, sexual assault. And then after that, if you go on to have what we call different clusters of symptoms for at least a 6-month period, then you'll receive a diagnosis of PTSD. And so we look at it in kind of 4 clusters. So things like re-experiencing symptoms. So the person with PTSD re-experiences the trauma in some way. This could be things like nightmares, intrusive thoughts and memories that pop in their mind, flashbacks, which is a little less common, I think, than maybe what the media or movies portray. But sometimes people do feel as if they're going through the event once again and kind of lose touch with kind of the here and now and the present. So they have to have at least one symptom of re-experiencing, as well as hyperarousal. So things like being very keyed up, on edge, irritability, so hypervigilance, maybe checking their surroundings, not liking maybe people to sit behind them in a restaurant or to be standing behind them, kind of having your head on the swivel, as well as changes in mood and cognition. So a lot of times it's very uncomfortable to feel very hypervigilant, so they want to avoid those things. So that's another cluster, avoiding people, places, situations, and feelings that remind them of the traumatic event. And this leads to the kind of shutting down those emotions. Because they're so painful, we want to push them away. And so we notice that perhaps maybe folks that had more of a positive outlook on life prior to trauma might start to look at the world as maybe completely dangerous or no one can be trusted. Their mood may be more, kind of more depressed or kind of more pessimistic than before. So we look at those different clusters and ensure that it lasts over that 6-month or more period for a diagnosis of PTSD.
How can a family member or a friend of someone who is suffering from this but maybe doesn't want help or think they need help, how can someone in that situation help someone else who may be resistant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good question. We do get that a lot. I get a lot of phone calls from concerned loved ones, saying that I think my friend or my partner is experiencing PTSD. How can I help? And the biggest thing is really just to be supportive and to be there, let them know that you are there as a support system, because we know that that's a huge buffer for PTSD symptoms and recovery. I think another thing too is not necessarily to pry about details, but just allowing them to know that that they're there if they want to talk.
So what should be the first step for someone who's suffering from PTSD and they're ready for help, but they don't know what to do?
So I would definitely recommend to check out the National Center for PTSD website. Like I said, it has different treatment options, and there's also what we call a shared decision model. And so you can kind of walk yourself through about different options, what you might think might be a good fit for you, try to get a sense of what you think might be helpful. And we're always at the VA open. We have walk-in services in our general mental health clinic where people can get connected. You can talk to your primary care provider that can, contact myself as a program manager, and we can get people into, even if it's just to talk about treatment options or even just to assess for PTSD, I think can be helpful. So maybe if the person's not technically ready for trauma treatment, we do have other services though too that we can provide. And I do want to say too that not all the treatments involve talking in great detail about the trauma. Like I mentioned, the avoidance is a key kind of ingredient with PTSD. And so oftentimes that's what hinders people from seeking treatment, is that they don't want to talk about the worst event that's ever happened, which makes sense. But we do have other treatments where you might write about it, or you just kind of process what are the thoughts surrounding the event. Do you blame yourself? Do you blame someone else for what happened? And kind of looking at those different thoughts that keep people stuck with PTSD. So yeah, I don't want anybody to be scared off by thinking that I have to go into a ton of detail about a particular event.
What would you say to someone who's watching this and struggling with PTSD, but maybe not sure they want help or need help?
Again, I would just look at the resources that they have online. Talk to other people. I mentioned be connected. Looking at testimonials of people that have been there, and oftentimes, veterans find out that their battle buddies or their friends have also suffered from PTSD. So I think just having that open dialogue can be helpful. And they can always call the VA. Like I said, my number's online as well too, and they can call me directly if they have questions.
What else would you like people to know about the resources and programs for treating PTSD that are available through the clinic here at the Phoenix VA Medical Center?
I'd like to highlight too that we do a lot of telehealth. Even pre-pandemic, we were doing video appointments to try to outreach to some of the pockets further out in Arizona that might not be able to make it to the main hospital for treatment. So I always encourage people that, we try to accommodate as much as possible. That I've worked with veterans that childcare is an issue. So when the baby goes down for a nap, we do a session, and they can stay at their house. So telehealth is a really big option. Like I said, we have lots of different treatment options too. We work really hard to try to figure out what's a good fit and to meet the veteran where they're at. And just the recovery is possible. And so we're going to have our first inaugural PTSD summit. It'll be virtual this year. Hopefully it'll be in person next year. And we're partnering with the Prescott and the Tucson VA as well too. So it's June 29th from 9 to 12, and we'll be showing different presentations on things like moral injury. Traumatic brain injury is also very common with PTSD if they've been in some sort of blast or explosion. Intimacy and various topics. We'll be discussing the evidence-based therapies that we provide and that every VA across the country provides. And just doing kind of a Q&A and having other veterans share their stories. So we're really excited about that event. And
so this summit is something that's open to anybody who wants to attend.
Yep. And we hope that they will share it with their family and friends so that they have more awareness too of what PTSD might look like and how they might be able to help. Recovery is possible, so we want to try to reach as many veterans as we can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luedtke, for all that you and your clinical team are doing to help our veterans, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
VA programs like those offered by Dr. Luedtke and her colleagues at the Phoenix VA Medical Center are among the many benefits available to veterans. Veterans can conveniently manage their health care with My Healthy Vet, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs online patient portal. My Healthy Vet's features enable veterans to refill VA prescriptions, track health measures, view personal health information, and more. Learn more about My Healthy Vet at myhealth.va.gov. Throughout the month of June, you'll find different ways you can help learn about, support, and help raise awareness of PTSD. Learn more at ptsd.va.gov. You can find more information about the PTSD Foundation of America at ptsdusa.org. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Veterans AZ, and thank you to Chad, Adam, Dr. Luedtke, and everyone who is working each day to give veterans the support they have earned. Find full-length interviews, past episodes, and more information at veteransaz.org. You can also find Veterans AZ in your favorite podcast app.